morning, everyone. Welcome to the final European Conference of the Safe Zone Project. The Safe Zone Project is a project funded by the European Commission, Director General for Migration and Home Affairs, International Security and Police. As you can see, this will be a hybrid seminar. Some of us are here, cannot see them, and following us through Zoom. And there will be an interpretation into Italian from English. So I'm asking every one of you to speak slow because there is a good sound, but the interpreters need to translate. Safe Zone Project has been a 24-month project starting in January 2020, right at the start of the pandemic. So we have been severely hit by the last 2 years of pandemic waves. And as you may have seen, we have had many changes in the agenda during the last couple of days because as many as 4 of our speakers are sick with COVID. 2 of them will anyway be able to hold their presentation online, but other 2 are unfortunately too sick to participate. So we wish them good luck and go on. We need to go on with the conference. I will do just a brief presentation of the day, just to say that we'll now have a welcome presentation by Raffaele Bracalenti, the president of the Psychoanalytic Institute for Social Research. I also work there. I didn't present myself. I'm Katia Santonico. And then we will have a presentation of the project achievements and key issues, and 2 keynote speeches. Then we will have 2 sessions, 2 roundtables before and after the coffee break. The coffee break will be a 20-minute coffee break around 11:50, and then we will have time for questions. We will gather questions, collect the questions via the chat, the Zoom chat, and we will then organize them, divide them per topic, and give them to the speakers to reply around 1 o'clock, so after the presentations. But you can note down the questions all along, and we will collect them. So I think this is it for the moment. So I leave the floor now for a welcome by Raffaele Bracalenti.
Thank you, Katia. Hello, everybody. I have to say, when we thought to organize this conference, the first time in the project in which we thought it would be possible to meet, to be all together in a room, we were in a completely different world, we can say. We thought to be more or less at the end of the pandemic, and it was not true. And we think no one of us will have expected to be in this war atmosphere. And then things have really deeply changed for all of us. And it's so, I would say, it's so sad to start the day reading on the newspaper about the killing around and the fear of the possible spreading of the war in other European countries and all the rest. So I have to say, I think our mood is deeply affected by the concern for the situation, and this, I think, need to be underlined and to be reminded. So said that, I have to say that even the perspective of the project, so I have to say, in a way, influenced by this atmosphere. When we started the project was about radicalization, and it was in a way the continuing of the previous project we already carried out, looking at the risk of radicalization the Islamic radicalization, and working on that, we have get through the possible strategies to stop radicalization, eventually to work on radicalization. And one of these was, of course, the idea that sport could be extremely relevant in involving youth and in working with them, and of course in using sport as a tool to contrast the use of violence and as a strategy to change the world, let's say. After that, I have to say we realized that, of course, not only Islamic radicalization was a concern in our society, other radicalized movement were as well, and we knew that, of course, is extremely active in our countries. Of course, we are speaking about right-wing movements claiming violence as a tool to change and to work, as I said, to change society. And we know that the risk of violence supported by these right-wing movements were extremely high, and I think all of us, we had the chance to read about especially the anti-Semitic attacks and the hate speeches and so on and so on. So this was the start. Then the idea was, I think that what the kind of fil rouge in the project was this evidence that sport, of course, can, I said this since ever, one of the more important educational practice. The reference can get back to Marcel Mauss in the one of these. I don't know if you are familiar with this very famous French anthropologist of the 20th century. In one of these is contribution to the anthropological studies, wrote a book about the body techniques, and body techniques is how we learn to use the body, and with this huge variety of different approach to the using of the body. It's from the sport, the way in which we eat, the way in which we work, the health, the way in which we care for children, the way in which we make love, and these are deeply change. They can change deeply from one culture to the other. And sport, of course, is one of the key elements. And we know that our different cultures have used different approach to sport. Let's say most of the East technique of the use of the body, for instance, is a very, how can I say, a clear use of to manage violence and to simulate war in a way. But this is true for many other sports. And we know the connection between sports and violence, just to mention the Greek culture in which sport competition was so connected with the military world. So this is to say that sport is really on the edge. In one side, it is sport as a way to train the body in order to make it more fit to war, to violence. And the other, of course, is the idea that the sport can be exactly the opposite. It's a way to manage and to control the instinct of violence, the violent reaction, and especially to elaborate the chance to create with others a positive and a cooperative feelings. So this was the start, of course, and this is the idea is how then coaches and sport trainers can be aware about this and can use this in training youth and in coping, in collaborating with other agencies to contrast radicalization and the let's say inappropriate use of violence in the human relationships. Of course, I said this this was the start of the project, and nowadays we have to read that all the European countries have agreed to increase the investment on military weapons. So we, in a way, we move back in the past. We think that was something has changed. That we were more in an attitude to reduce. At least this was what I think most of us were thinking about, to reduce the cost in weapons and war, in a way, investment, and to think more in the society as a peaceful, environment, but now if we put more money in weapons and so on, it means that in a way perhaps our mindset is changing. We are more keen to think ourselves as soldiers, and so to think back, to think again that our sport is a mean to is a way to train us as soldiers. I hope not, of course. I hope, and I think we will go ahead with other European projects to think that sport is a beautiful way to meet other people in a peaceful way, and not a way to train our bodies to be more effective in killing other people. But we have to notice that as deeply change, the cultural change is happening in our European countries, sad to say. So, but as I said, the last thing I want to mention before to leave the floor to the presentation of the project is that, of course, we think that often sport and trainers and coaches do not feel themselves included, or that they do not consider themselves as a part, or I say as a team with other educational agencies. So often, if they realize that there are problems in the youth, they feel quite isolated, or they don't know exactly how to connect themselves with others educational agencies to better work on the youth. This is what we call a multi-agency approach, and of course we are quite convinced that we speak in Italy, I think not only in Italy, of educational community. It means that all the different agencies should feel themselves committed to perceive the same educational goal on youth, and so sport trainers should be enrolled in a way in this team, and to work together with the others. And I think this is what one of quite relevant part of the work done in this project, to understand how better connect sport trainers with other education agencies. And I think this is, of course, is relevant as well for another reason. And then really, I finish. I think I took too much time, but I'm really going to finish. I think this is, as in all democracy, the best way to make sure that everybody is making the right job is to have this check and balance. So when you work together in a multi-agency approach, it means that the other partner of the team can verify what you do, can check what you do, can help you to take the right direction. And of course, it's vice versa, of course. So I think given the relevance of the duty to educate youth, this idea not to work isolated, to work with the others, to give the chance to other professionals to share and to contribute to the strategic approach, I think it's really, really important. This is what is transparency in a way, and to be to give the chance to all to understand what's happening in this very relevant and important education moment we know how much youth can rely often on coaches and trainers sport, so they really can be extremely relevant in shaping the attitude of the youth. So this responsibility implies really high sense of commitment and the need to work together. So thank you very much. I'm so sorry that our seminar cannot be has to take place in such a sad moment for Europe, but this is the reality, and let us hope for the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you for these thoughtful words and for pointing out the relevance of the work the Safe Zone project has undergone and the different challenges and focuses of Safe Zone, which aim has been to empower coaches and force trainers to prevent youth radicalization and violent extremism. Now to tell us more about the Safe Zone project achievements, key issues and findings, I'm inviting Alessia Mefalopoulos and Mariana Barbosa. Alessia Mefalopoulos was a project manager for Safe Zone and is a colleague in IPRS. Mariana Barbosa teaches at the Catholic University of Porto, Portugal. They will make a joint effort here to let us know everything we've learned in summary.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Can you see the slides, Alessandro? Yes, just for confirmation. Okay, good morning. So this will be a quick overview of what Safe Zone was and is. It's nearly concluding, and some some of the major key issues and findings. Are you having? Okay. So Safe Zone is a project funded by the European Commission, the Internal Security Fund Police of the DG Migration and Home Affairs. It started in January 2020, and with a short extension, it's concluding now at the end of March. And the consortium consists of 7 partners from 4 EU countries. IPRS is the coordinator and CSI are the Italian partners, CJD for Germany, and the University Alma Mater Europaea and MMA Klub Maribor from Slovenia, and the Catholic University of Porto with the sports organization IPDJ from Portugal. The objectives, very quickly, were to increase the knowledge, skills, and capacity of sport coaches and the other key actors in youth sports in order to reduce risk of violent radicalization among adolescents and young people. Then we meant to develop and test the transferable educational tools, training methodology, and let's say promote indications and recommendations for EU member states. And finally, promote cooperation, as Raffaele Bergenti was saying, promote cooperation and increase the awareness of the main actors involved with the education of adolescents and young people locally and nationally and at European level. What did we mean by radicalization? We adopted, there are many, of course, as always, there are many concepts, many meanings, many definitions of radicalization. So we adopted the concept of radicalization seen as a process by which an individual is hooked by another individual or group and persuaded to embrace an ideology, behavior that promotes violence and that is against the norms of society in exchange for recognition, appreciation, and sense of belonging. This means that we did not limit radicalization to a ground of religion, but also political, racial, and whatever matrix, including radicalization to violent extremism. The emphasis is therefore on the process of radicalization, which entails, on the one hand, someone or a group who has the ability to persuade and manipulate, and on the other side, on the other hand, someone in a condition of particular vulnerability, which means isolation, marginality, and of course, adolescents are vulnerable per se, but there are also particularly vulnerable adolescents and young people. So we decided to focus on sport coaches as we regarded them as key in this process of prevention of radicalization. So sport coaches and educators, we saw them as having this key role, and based on these factors, they can actively promote inclusion while practicing sport. They are key to transfer social rules and values such as fair play and respect. They are, as part of their work, they are also key to value the adolescents' strengths and support their self-esteem. By coaching them, their practice, this is one of the main points we tried to transfer when we had the workshops with them. And it was that making them aware that they do have an influence on young people, even if they don't want to, they do have an influence. So the matter is to give a direction to this influence. And they can even turn into role models for adolescents. And for all these reasons, they are well placed to observe any potential change in their behavior. And this, of course, contributes to early identification of risk. Why did we choose sports? Because it's an area of informal education, or better said, non-formal education, which can be particularly effective in, for young people and adolescents. Because it's sport is widespread, and it can reach out to many families, and I would say the wider community as well. And this is a key point because sport, as Raffaele Bergenti was saying, conveys a sense of belonging. It can be to a team, to a group, a sports club, or anything, to a community. And we will see that this is a very controversial issue, since radicalized groups also offer a sense of belonging. Of course, the basic factor for choosing sport is that it is available to professional role, since we are speaking of adolescents particularly. So it can influence physical and mental health, overall development, then increase a sense of belonging, self-esteem, as we said, and it helps shape the personality and skills of children and adolescents. And it teaches them to deal with emotions such as the defeat, fear, and conflict. For all these reasons, sport is generally regarded as a positive and protected environment. But we'll see that again, it can be a bit tricky to consider it as protected at the start, let's say. So we have just one controversial issue, I mentioned it before, which is the meaning and the value of sport groups. They provide adolescents with a lot of responses to their major needs. So the search for self-identity, a sense of belonging to a group, and a sense of being accepted and acknowledged by this group. And sport certainly does offer such responses, and which are as protective factors. But at the same time, exactly the same factors are provided, as I was saying before, by radicalized groups. So how can we convince adolescents and young people to take distance from radicalized groups? We don't have, of course, the certain responses, but on the base of our project, we found that there is a need to prevent, within sports, there is a need to prevent any young individual from being placed in a condition of isolation and marginality. Also, of course, and this is what we worked on, to strengthen the capacity of sport coaches to identify potential risk situations, and earlier to raise their awareness on their role and their potential influence. And then more should be done to reach out to families and involve and reach out to local actors in the community, all local actors, so that everyone is aware of the issue and the need to create a monitoring and a rewarding system. So in order to offer all this, we should start to consider sport as a proper key education agency. And again, as both Kate Santonico and Raffaele Bracalenti were mentioning, there is probably a need for a cultural change in this sense. Now I leave the word to, yeah, you want to continue?
Like here,
Okay,
right?
okay. Mariana
So, good morning. So there are many lessons learned from the interviews, focus groups, national and transnational meetings and seminars. Some of these lessons were country specific, but many are common among countries. And we choose some of that we think are major concerns to share with you today. So one of the most important lessons when it comes to think of preventing negative behaviors using sports context is that there is really an urgent need to shifting the focus from performance to education in child and youth sports. There is this need to build a shared culture of sports as a pedagogical tool, as well as a powerful means of inclusion. Because we did the focus group with sports managers and also with sports coaches, it was very interesting to notice that sport managers say that they value education dimension of sport, but then they have difficulties promoting it because sport coaches are mostly oriented into improving performance. And then we have also the sport coaches saying that they would like to focus more on education than on performance, but they don't feel that view in sport managers. And so they talk about the need to raise awareness and train sport managers so that they will be also more prone to focus on the educative role of sports. So in sum, in order to shift this focus from performance to education, we really need both like a top-down and a bottom-up approach, promoting this change in both sports managers and also sports coaches. You can change, okay. So it was also focused this need to move from viewing sports as a complementary activity and recognize it as a priority for children and adolescents development. Sports is too often viewed as complementary activity. School systems are insufficiently equipped in this sense, thus leaving the economic weight of sports practice onto the family's shoulders. And consequently, many children and teenagers who belong to the most marginalized social sectors are excluded from sports, thus enforcing these children exposure to the risks connected with exhalation. It was also stressed the need from moving from volunteerism to professionalization. One of the major constraints relates to the heterogeneous background of sports coaches. So in all the different countries involved in the project, it was stated that many coaches who train children and youngsters are volunteers and have received no specific training to do so. It was also very stressed the need, as Alessa already pointed out, to involve parents and families regarding the radicalization process. In general, we found that there are already many forms of radicalization prevention in the different countries involved, but a lack of national strategic plans or specific programs for radicalization prevention. And so there is a really need for multi-agency coordination and knowledge transfer of these procedures and of these good practices.
Okay, and just to conclude with the presenting the main project output. So we have an e-learning platform which will be effective online at the end next week. So you can connect to the website of SEPSON project, and starting from next week, you will find this e-learning platform for all sport coaches and educators and any other youth educators. And it will be in 5 languages, English, German, Italian, Slovenian, and Portuguese. Then we will have European guidelines for sport managers, local authorities, and policymakers with the main recommendations, some of which you have just heard from Mariana, and a prevention through sport booklet, which will be, which is actually a handbook. Again, addressing sports coaches and educators and youth educators. These also will be, as soon as they will be finalized, they will be also in 5 languages and uploaded on the project website. Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Alessia and Mariana, for highlighting the many topics we've been facing and highlighting the role of coaches as to start and the responsibility this role entails, and highlighting the potential of sports as for personal growth, and especially as a way to include young people who suffer marginalization. Now we will go into deeper understanding of these topics with The first keynote speaker is Renato Marino. He's a scientific consultant of the Italian Sports Center, and he's also a coach. And he will address the potentials of sport practices as a means to preventing youth violence.
Good morning to all colleagues present and remotely connect. I am glad to meet you and take part at this final stage. The CSI, Italian Sports Center, works to identify methodologies to support the dissemination of good practices focused on non-formal learning. Since the entry into force of the Lisbon Treaty in December 2009, the European Union has tried to consider sport as its own area of expertise and has done a lot to promote physical activity in Europe. Waiting this commitment, there is a lot of projects that have tried to study the contribution of sporting practice against the radicalization and violence of young people. Practicing sport is not guarantee against radicalization and violence. If we think about it, sport can express extreme and violent phenomena. In football, in basketball, but also in other sports, we see many fans who embrace extremist political ideologies. Often they speak out with violence towards the fans of other teams and the police. They live mainly in the disadvantaged social context, but are also remotely controlled by the interests of sports clubs. We observe from a sociological point of view and has then distinctions that generates distance between people. On the other side, sport excludes and expels athletes. The dropout, especially in the under 18s, is around 40% every year. Many athletes are disappointed by a tiring, too demanding and unsatisfactory experience. When sport is only practiced competitively, it can be a resource for radicalization and violence. First, performance as a category of a success sport can result in a cult of the body. Improving performance is the only goal. Second dynamics, the dynamics of sporting competition can create a cult of victory, in which winning and the defeating of opponents is the primary consideration. The consequences are typically excessive ambition, overestimation, and hostile attitude towards opponents. Finally, the cult of violence of a competitive sport can lead to verbal and physical violence, both among competitors and in the social context of the competition. These negative aspects in sport offer potential entry points for situations of violence. Some sports, such as mixed martial arts, have been the subject of specific studies for the recruitment and radicalized and violent young people. The Italian Sports Center, CSI, since 1944, has been promoting education through sport. Education is the key word. In this perspective, sport practice is an individual and group experience. Performance and exasperated competition are not important. The values of education through sport are completely different. The values of aggregation. It's not possible to practice sport alone. You need the other team, the other competitor, your coach, teammates. A sport club can represent a valid alternative to fear of the long lines. The value of inclusion. Social inclusion represents a defense against violent extremism, and is strongly linked to creating the mental and social basis for being open to learning and making good decisions, including the active rejection of the push and the pull factors towards violence. Athletes are valued for what they share with their peers. Social inclusion through sport increases the social bonds between participants and provides them with a sense of purpose, counteracting radical activities. The value of the resilience. Resilience refers to the person's ability to overcome challenges and negatively impact their physical and emotional well-being. Many studies, the study of Pisa, University Pisa, report that the sport people have a resilience factor 2.3, which is roughly more than double the resilience factor of those who do not practice any sport. The value of the rules. Sport is beautiful in compliance with the rules. Fair play was born in sport and indicates a lifestyle, a way of behaving that includes respect for others. And in all sport, both team and individual, the rules have a priority goal to ensure the integrity and the health of all athletes. The role of coach is very important. It is the protagonist of educational relationships. Education through sport, therefore, does not intercept people who could become violent, but creates the conditions to allow young people to protect themselves from violent extremism, strengthening the sense of sharing with teammates, managers, and coach of sport clubs. The experience of the Italian Sports Center, CSI, suggests in agreement with other educational institutions and agencies some practical consequences. Educating and training through sport means creating safe spaces. Sport venues must be beautiful and pleasant to welcome everyone. Really, point two, really working for a sport hall, finding most satisfying sporting role. For example, sport organizer, coach, referee. Point three, training good coaches. In the CSI Italian Sports Center, the coaches do not study to build champions, but they learn how to involve all the athletes even during training. Nobody studying. Point four, winning is important. However, learning to win is difficult. Recognizing the limits, setting defeat, represent training, experiencing the trust, solidarity, risk sharing, the ability to dream. The Italian Sports Center has this vision of education through sport, which has been analyzed by the Safe Zone project as an effective tool to contrast against radicalization and violence. We will continue to work so that sport is increasingly a place of inclusion and aggregation, because this is sport and we believe in. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Renato. for highlighting again the ambivalence of sports as a negative and the negative aspects that can be potential entry point for violence, but that have always also been the subject of a reflection that has allowed this project to underline the values of sport as an opportunity of education, to create safe places for everyone where to develop all the potential of the individual. Now we will go into further understanding the importance of the sports practice for young people and adolescents and the impact of COVID-19 pandemic with Paolo Rocha. I'm asking him to come to our. Hello, Paolo Rocha. You can see there.
Your computer?
Yes, you can. You have a presentation, right?
Yes.
Yes, it's on the left. Paolo Rocha is the head of the Sports for All division of the IPDJ National Sport of All program. IPDJ stands for Portuguese Institutions for Sports and Juvenile, something like that. He's also a guest assistant professor of the.
So,
Okay, the floor is
first of
yours.
all,
Thank you.
it is a pleasure to be here with all of you. Like we were saying, we are in a very, very special moment at European level, especially for those countries that are more near the conflict and are having, of course, the direct impact, not only in economical and social perspective, but also in a practical way of living. Some weeks ago, I was intended to go for a conference in Romania, near the border, and it was not possible to have a similar seminar with some of the people that were joining in the conference in presence. So we had to have all together online. So it also impacted our life, but especially for those who are mostly affected. So we come from a situation, a difficult situation, a pandemic that nobody was expecting and already not new in the last century, but new in this one. And we came here now with a situation which is, I think, much more relevant and much more impactful in our lives and in the future than the previous one. However, I tried to organize this sharing of thoughts with you in three main areas. First of all, some facts. Secondly, some not so good news. And finally, some good news. So the facts. This was the main outcome of the pandemic situation in Portugal during 2020, 2021. It's pretty similar to those that you experienced, for example, in Italy, but some months before. You had it first and then we had it after. But I think that in all the basic countries, the European countries, more or less we have experienced 2 or 3 big waves of social isolation, which had a huge impact on our lives. And of course, regarding youth, more even impactful, because they had to stay at home with no possibility of interaction, not only at the school level, but also in the grassroots sport level, where most of our outputs that you were presenting today are trying to focus. So this was basically the idea, and a group of countries, which interestingly included Russia. And by the way, I can say that I'm against the radicalization and the extremism also with the intellectual part of the people that are representing also Russia in all these scientific forums and in sport also. But that's another story. I think that is important to understand that the impact of COVID was in fact really and extremely painful not only in a personal and biological perspective, but also in a psychological perspective. And what we did, we tried to organize in Europe 10 countries, including Italy, that was trying to understand how the COVID impact these lives in several dimensions. And if you take a good look, I will show you some of the data and more, let's say, more summary, brief summary of what we have found. Is based on the WHO recommendations, which, as you know, recommend that 60 minutes per day should be the minimum of physical activity in the different dimensions: physical education, extracurricular activities, or club activities. I'm talking extracurricular activities done in school, but other than classes, normal curricular classes. And then we have the clubs. So only 1/5 of the children meet during this period the minimum requirements of physical activity during this time. So it means that we're in a simple biological perspective, most of the children and youngsters did not achieve the recommendations of a minimum of 60 minutes of movement per day. In addition, when we try to take a look more specifically on the different dimensions of these activities, as you remember, during these periods, some of the countries or most of the countries had education online, so TV or digital platforms, depending on the organization of the different countries. There was still a possibility during the weekends of children play a little bit outside, but even their situation was very, very limited. Sometimes it was almost impossible to leave the house unless you were in a rural area or in an area that had opportunity for people to have some space, because in big towns, the situation was very, very, very difficult. So if you take a look, the time that was spent in physical activity and the kids that were having more access to physical activity was those that had the possibility of maintaining a sort of routine, organized routine, and someone that was trying to be active even in an online perspective of physical education, so in a curricular perspective. So even the dimension of the online curricular physical education was very important to maintain at least some levels of physical activity. On the other way around, the time for sedentary behavior, the time spent in sedentary behavior increased a lot above the recommendations, which are the maximum of 2 hours per day, not including the time that was spent in classes that were online already in a seated position. So I will show you some of the data. This is data, for example, from Portugal, but is very similar to most of the countries. So the different grades. And here is the example for physical education. If you do physical education online in the last 7 days, and how many times during that physical education that was developed online, what was the time spent on vigorous physical activity? Because I can do some activity, but there is several degrees of intensity. As you can see, from I don't have physical education online until always, there was a different disparity, but sometimes, the most of the people said, sometimes I have some vigorous activities during the physical education. So even the fact of having physical education was not implying that they were having access to strong stimulus to stimulate their bodies, and in a biological perspective, not only in the terms of physiology, but also in terms of the psychological part, let's say. So I would like to move a little bit, and when we ask for the total time of 60 minutes, you also can see that most of the replies are between 0 to 2 days. Most of the people don't say that they don't have possibility of spending too much time in doing at least 60 minutes of physical activity. So this was really bad news. How come this bad news can be worse? They could be worse because when we take a look on the other side of the coin, we look for the time spent in sedentary behavior. And when you look for the time spent in sedentary behavior, if you have here in this legend, we have the number of hours spent. And as you can see, as the number of hours of time spent in TV viewing, video games, social network, and so on, you will see the bars are increasing with the number, progressive number. And what we saw is that a lot of people have more than 6 hours per day of time spent in sedentary behavior. This is, of course, a non-opportunity for socialization, for activation, and for activating some of the values that the previous presenter was presenting us regarding the basic values that sport can educate through values. So when we ask in addition, what were the main activities because of the situation, you can see that normal individual activities, not group activities, individual activities which does not give the opportunity to exchange, to talk, to develop socialization with the others. So the individual activities, basically based on running, walking, cycling, were the most relevant activities, along with some of the activities normally developed using platforms. As you remember, fitness activities that were being offered in the different online and digital platforms. So this means that in a very, very, let's say, brief position, we can say that when asking the kids their perception about what was the time used by them during the pandemic, most of them say that during the second moment of the pandemic isolation, so in 2021, it was even worse than the first time of the pandemic in 2020. So it was difficult in the second year to even adjust and to create alternatives for the situation that we have lived already in 2020. And this was their perception. In addition, when we ask about the time spent on the screen, they also say that they probably spent even more time during the second period than in the first period. So there was not here a learning curve in the dimension of what to do to overcome the situation. These are the not so good news. The second not so good news is that, in fact, in Europe at the moment, we have, along with the social and economical problem that we are having now, and we are for sure living the upcoming months or years probably, is that already in the past, almost 80 billion euros per year are already spent at European level in the direct and indirect costs related with the fact that people don't do enough physical activity. They don't do enough opportunities for using sport as a way not only to counteract the physiological and biological part, but also these questions about social inclusion, about radicalization and violence prevention. This means that when you look upon the science related with this, you can see, this is data already with 4 years, but it's still very, very young data published, very recent data. You can see the difference between the relative risk of several outcomes, health outcomes, cancer, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all-cause mortality, when we have no physical activity involved or when we have physical activity involved. This, in the perspective of governments, it's very important because we have to take a look as an whole to the society. And as you know, Europe is becoming older and we need to understand how we can foster the renovation of our societies. The second important idea is that the not enough time that we spend in sport and physical activity is not giving us the opportunity to provide to our youngsters all the opportunities that they need to have in order to foster their integral development. And the first idea, very simple, is that now is proven that the brains, a simple thing, the brain size of a kid that is doing physical activity is bigger than a brain size of a person that is not doing physical activity. So the brain actually is trained by exercise, by activity. So if you have more brain, in fact, probably you can have more possibility of having a better capacity of using that brain. Normally, it's what we think. So in fact, now we know that fitter kids have bigger brains. And in addition, we know also that fitter kids have also more academic achievement. So they have more opportunities to be better in school, to have better results, and which are linked, in fact, with marginalization, with isolation, and so on and so on. In addition, we know that, and this is related to your specific concern in psychiatric, in psychological area, we know also that, for example, the level of muscular fitness is related with psychiatric diagnosis years later. And as you can see, as the most relevance in muscular fitness in legs and in hands and grip, for example, will have a better outcome in the people that have years on prognosis of psychiatric disorders. In addition, we know also that the fitness level, which is directly related with the quality of the activity that we do, is also related with the society, with the suicide mortality years on. So doing physical activity or sport with the others is not only about the body, it's also about the outcomes related with the social and psychological well-being that are, in fact, what we are discussing here and are the main impactful things in society. So I want to give you just two notes to finish. This is Khalida. I already spoke about her. This is an example of a girl that was playing. She was the former captain of the Afghanistan football team when it was possible for the girls to play football in Afghanistan. After the last events in Afghanistan, as you know, she was not able to be anymore in Afghanistan. She created an association in Denmark, and she now tries to receive refugees from Afghanistan, and she keeps playing football in Denmark with some of the girls because now they cannot represent. Not yesterday, 2 days ago, I saw it on TV that some of the schools for girls, higher level schools for girls in Afghanistan are still closed. And they cannot go to school because of the wardrobe that they have. They did not decide yet the wardrobe that they should wear to go to school. So the schools are closed for the girls still in Afghanistan. So that's what we are talking about in the 21st century still. And finally, the good news. The good news. So based on all of these problems, the Council of Europe and European Commission created a project which is running close, just close this deadline of execution, and it aims basically to get opportunity to some of the countries to create effective child safeguarding in sport policies. So something that you are intending with this project in terms of outputs and in terms of spin-off of those outputs. How now to put these outputs on the move and how to use it in the different context of the sport system all over the countries. So what we did, and Portugal, as you can see, Austria, Belgium, Croatia, Israel, Norway, and Portugal were involved and developed what we call a sort of roadmap, a specific roadmap for effective child safeguarding in sport policies. So basically and briefly, I can say that it was identified in each country what was the scheme about prevention and monitoring that you were saying, that Alessia was saying some minutes ago, the monitoring of the situations regarding violence and how they are accompanied even by the judicial system in each country. And then based on this, identify how can we set up a strategy to prevent, to monitor, and to solve the problems related with violence, which happens not only related with radicalization, as you know, but along with other types of social episodes in our countries. So what we did, and we as just recently published, we created a sort of a confederation of stakeholders, the top stakeholders of sport movement, along with the grassroots stakeholders, which by the end goes to the local agents that you are identifying, managers, sport managers, and sport coaches, which are, let's say, the basic cell of the problem, but they need a top-down approach. And the top-down approach, it's really top-down approach. And top-down approach, it's Secretary of State, is governmental organizations, is confederations, is National Commission for Protection of Children's Rights, Olympic Committee, Paralympic Committee, Confederation where all the federations, where all the federations are represented, and then, of course, the coaches and the clubs at the local level. So basically, and to finish, it was created a sort of roadmap with the idea, and the first measure is to create a sort of, you are talking about the I think that you use the multi-agency term. So this is basically a sort of coordination of this multi-agency term. And we created a figure, it will be created, the figure of guardian, which will be in each club, a person that will have the opportunity to coordinate all these activities and to report if some of these situations occur and coordinates this dimension above the bottom-up structure. So this is giving the first steps. This is something that probably no, directly links with your project. So in Portugal, I can say that we are very, very, not curious, we are very, very paying attention to the situation. And of course, we will try to see how we can, let's say, link the outputs that we are developing and the way that we are progressing after the outputs that we are publishing with the strategy that we have already and how we are going to combine this and to see and pilot the best ways of putting these in motion. So there is a lot of work to do until 24, the next 2 years to do this. And of course, I only, from our point of view, you only have to thank for your work that you have been done. So we have raised a very important issue on the society. It's not a collateral issue. It's a very relevant issue in the society. And we need inside of the governmental systems and the institutional systems to take a very good look of this and to understand how you're going to progress. So this was basically the good news, and I'm very hoping that in the upcoming 2 years you can make another seminar, maybe here or in another elsewhere in Europe, and we can already have some results to present to people and have some best practices to present. So it's also a challenge for you, Rafael, in the next 2 years to monitor and don't finish your work now. And I think that the work that you have started is just the first phase done, and now it's the real deal. It's the game time.
Thank you very much. Someone is asking on the chat for bibliography. If you have any bibliography you can provide through the the presentation maybe, or
What I can do, if you want also to provide to the people that are following us, I can share with you the national strategy.
yes.
It's already written in English, so it's published under the Council of Europe, and you are invited also to participate and to follow the next steps. And for us, it will be or any help will be, of course, necessary to together find the best ways to do this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this tremendous picture, but with some opportunities.
I warned, not so good news in the beginning.
So now we are a bit behind schedule. It's on my fault, and it's a bit the fault that we started a bit late. And we are now going to have our first session, roundtable. The title of this session is The Pedagogical Dimension of Sports Practice, the Voice of Sports Coaches. It will be moderated by Goran Kunze. He's a professor at the Alma Mater Europaea-Evropski University in Slovenia. It's online. I know it's online. I'm trying to see if we can also hear him.
Hello.
Hello, Goran. Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. So just to introduce this session. We have asked our speakers in the roundtable to ask two main questions, which are based on their experience, which could be the role of sports coaches in preventing youth violence and radicalization, and how did the pandemic change their way of work with young adolescents and young people. So, Goran, I leave the floor to you to present our speakers.
Hello. So, hi, my name is Goran Kunze from Slovenia, working as researcher for Alma Mater at this very interesting and important project. And in this first roundtable and first session, we will have sport coaches with a lot of experience presenting their good examples, presenting their views on importance of sport in preventing radicalization, in giving to young people better opportunities to express their tensions, aggression, to achieve goals. We will have Mr. Nuno Delgado from Portugal, who is a European champion and winner of first Olympic medal in judo for Portugal. And he is also sport educator at judo school in Portugal. Then the second speaker will be Matej Plavec from Slovenia. He is a fourth grade black belt holder in Aikido, so master of Aikido, and also head coach at Universal Aikido Association of Slovenia, and professional mixed martial arts trainer. The third participant at the roundtable is Mr. Sebastian Mohr, who is a sport coach in Germany, and he is also a researcher on the topic of youth radicalization, which gives him opportunity to see better or really be expert on this topic, and for sure he will have something important to share with us. And Miss Antonella Belluti, she is a twice Olympic champion in track cycling, a training coordinator of European projects, and fair coaching at Anti-Harassment Service in Sport at Assist. This is a national association of female athletes. So, dear speakers.
Sorry, just Antonella is online.
She's online.
Yeah, she's online. She's the only one that is not sitting.
That is not participating
Hello.
At the table. Yes. Hello. And hello to all of you. And I would like to start with this session, and we'll invite Mr. Nuno Delgado to give us the first presentation and comments.
So, hello, Goran. Hello, everyone. Just checking if the sound is okay.
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
For the presentation.
No, I don't need. Okay. It's okay. We can. So, first of all, let me just say it's a great honor to be part of this project following up since last year. And let me just make a small statements for a big friend and a person who will not be able to be here today with us, Mr. Mário Queixada, Professor Mário Queixada, who is a ethics ambassador in Portugal, unfortunately striving with COVID in a very serious situation. So my good hearts for Professor Mário Queixada. Guys, we are living difficult times. Climate change, pandemic, viruses, war. And this is actually very challenging times for sports, because as you know, and Paulo Rocha made a very interesting approach on the situation of our country, Portugal. We just had recently the nomination of the government of Portugal, and we had been presented that the budget for sports will be decreased in these times. So this our every time we are surprised, but in a way we are not happy. My message today regarding this theme is more sports, less war. It's been around since the times of the Greek Olympic Games. The sports is the time for peace, is our tool to educate people in the whole, not just for the physiology of health, but for being a person of success in life. And really, I'm coming from a martial arts, a sports of war, let's say, but the real war is inside of us, is the war within. Sports is really the space for us to develop the real concept of seeing in the other myself, you know. And also I'd like to take this time to make a small homage to a very big person that was lost in recent times, Mr. Desmond Tutu, which was actually a Nobel Prize for Peace, and someone that I had the chance to meet in 2013 in Portugal. That was the leader of the reconciliation program in South Africa. And he has this concept of Ubuntu. And Ubuntu really means that I am through others. And in judo, my sport, we fight with another person. We are embraced with our opponent. But really, we are not looking at our opponent as the problem. The problem is myself. When I go to a fight, a competition, when I teach my students all around Portugal, the principle of competing and fighting in judo, the war within, we always say that the real opponent is yourself. And these are really the message that I think that sports should bring to society in these times of climate change, pandemics, war, that sports is really the biggest tool, the biggest investment that Europe should make to overcome this adversity. So, like Paulo has said, it's not all just bad news. In martial arts, we always say that the crisis is an opportunity. So this crisis should be the opportunity for us to realize that we can become better humans by investing in sports, in the real sports. And the real sport is not about medals, it's not about records, it's about people becoming people. So I can share with you guys that last year I've been leading the European Capital of Sports. This is a nomination from an organization in the European Commission called ACES Europe. It's a partner of the European Commission. and that we created a roadmap for sports policies together with other 7 cities. Madrid, which is this year World Capital of Sports, The Hague, who is actually the European Capital of Sports 2022, Glasgow, Genoa here in Italy, that will become Capital of Sports in 2024, and of course Paris, our next Olympic city. And the big goal of this roadmap for sports policies is exactly to push the new European Parliament that will be elected in 2024, that the investment in sport is investment in life. Sports has a big impact on education. Sports has a huge impact on all forms of inclusion, radicalization, racism, gender equality, you name it. And finally, sports has a huge impact in our well-being, our health. So, what are you waiting for? In these difficult times that we have energetic agenda, that we have to save the budget and the money of our countries, we have to invest in sports, because everybody has understood that €1 invested in sports, it will bring an outcome. Many people say around €3.5 in the general development of the country in terms of health, education, and inclusion. So what are we waiting for? This is the fight that, as a martial arts artist, I want to follow, you know, the war within. And times will not be easier, for sure, in the next century. So this is the time to train for life, to use sports really how it could help us to overcome this adversity. So I urge you to fight with me, with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nuno. Yes, it is the time. It will be even more. And the next speaker will also share experience from martial arts. So Mr. Matej Plavec, I would like to invite you to make your presentation.
Thank you, Goran. So yes, really nice speech. Yeah. So greetings, everyone. I prepared the speech on the paper so I can be really clear about what I'm trying to say. So as I have already been introduced before, it is the fact that my life has been personally involved around martial arts for the last 30 years and professionally for the last 16 years, and a lot in the energetic transformational healing for the last 12 years. So I'm really grateful to stand here today, but perhaps I can also be a force for some changes in our work or even in the world. I will try to present this as clearly as possible, and I will turn the story upside down, thus starting the story at the end and finishing at the beginning. But I thought about what I would say at this point and what would be the conclusion of the optimistic story, or what would be the most crucial part. I came to this conclusion. So the coaches, as I am, we need more knowledge and awareness about what we do, simply because knowledge is what attracts both children and adolescents in the world of sports. Since I had the opportunity to participate in the Safe Zone project, my circle somehow came together. This time I have seen even more clearly that coaches need to be aware of the presence of the radicalism and extremism among young people, and that is clear that coaches are aware that we, or they, the coaches, we can change this. And what is even more important information for me is that children and adolescents need movement, and even more movement, as in my experience, this is the path to reduce extreme and radical behaviors and create a better sense of society. The body is made to move, Otherwise, the energy turns inwards and then the trouble started. So we need to put more effort in this work, like Nuno said, so many more youth can do or will do the sport. Years ago, I met the boy whose family divorced. They lived in the rented apartment under the kindergarten, and the boy stayed with his father when his parents divorced. In his adolescence, this boy's brother died, and that's where the trouble started. An environment full of criminal and violent behavior was where he spent his days. So the society he was a part of followed a trend of engaged in extreme behavior such as fights, theft, alcohol, and drugs. I would prefer not to go into details on this point. Even though this guy didn't feel good in these circumstances of violence and crime, he still had someone to whom, this is really important, he thought he belonged. The day came when the boy saw a poster inviting him to enroll a martial arts club. Based on the poster, he went to see training looked like, how the training looked like. There at the dojo, he saw a man who could present everything he knew and had an incredibly sophisticated knowledge of what he was doing. He was a master of martial arts. The boy was so attracted to this knowledge that he started training. What is very important here, at this moment, he changed one sense of belonging for another. He was attracted by the coach's knowledge. He started training martial arts, and this was the part of his everyday life. Instead of taking to the streets, he went to the gym. Negative energy has transformed. Now the question is, what attracted the boy in the world of sports? Was it the coach? Was it the coach's knowledge or the technique, or all of this together? So what attracted the boy to the world of the martial arts is basically not so that important. More important is what kept him there. So what held him there, even in his bad days full of anger, pain, confusion, and loneliness. So we can see now it is clear here that coaches have a lot of power and influence in the upbringing of children and adolescents, and also in adults. The boy's learning and socializing with the coach lasted for 15 years, so that this guy from the street, who sometimes socialized in criminal society and took part in extreme behavior, became the master of martial arts. After 15 years of training, this boy decided to go for it alone. And 16 children and teenagers came to his first training. In a short time, up to 250 children, adolescents, and adults came to his training. In the 16 years of work, he managed around and teach around over 3,000 children and adolescents. Today, he is still the coach of children, teenagers, and professional fighters who will fight on the big stages in important competitions next week. Maybe many of these young guys who trained with him have realized that they had the potential for extreme behavior like him, but now they're on a healthy athletic path. Well, you're probably already figured out that I'm using myself for the story. So for this speech, and actually the guy I'm talking about is me. And just for the end, however, I really would not like to put myself in the front, but I would like to share my findings, which I have managed to notice and learn during these days, these years of hard work. Even today, I spend between 5 to 8 hours in the gym. So make it clear. If I have had the power to change something at this moment, what I would do, which I believe would have a positive effect on the radicalism and extremism, I would put martial arts in all primary schools, especially the martial arts which involve techniques where our body falls on the floor. This has a particularly great benefit because pain is a great teacher. But for this work, we need educated coaches. So let me relate this to education, which I did in December 2021. In December, I took education for the trainer of a particular martial art discipline. And thinking now that I have been involved in the Safe Zone project, that in training for coaches, I didn't hear a single word, about the radicalization and extremism. Not I have seen anything similar in any other educations for martial art disciplines in Slovenia, which I did. So here is my next and last suggestion, because if in the coach education, I can hear a lot about psychology of sport, about the history of sport, about the sport pedagogy, why wouldn't we include another subject, namely radicalization and extremism, and put our work inside? I think we could achieve a lot by doing so. So, just the end, not forget that children and adolescents need our help, especially at this time when they are no longer able to move much. Actually, the modern world forces them not to. So I think that is why we and all of us, and especially the trainers, are here. We are the ones who will move them into movement, so they will transform their energy and create a better life for them and for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Matej. Really inspirational presentation. And this is what the sports should actually be, a model for better personal development and not for some radical thinking. And now, please, Mr. Sebastian Moore, you will have something interesting also to share about experiences with radicalization.
Yeah, thank you, Goran. First of all, thanks for sharing your story, Matej. I think you're a perfect example for a good role model as a coach. This is what I will focus on as well, to focus on values. As Goran already introduced me, I have kind of a double function here. I did my master's degree at university and was a soccer coach at the same time. So one day I came across the Safe Zone project through an information mail via my association and was immediately interested in it because of my academic and even practical background. As a participant in the workshops, I could see multiple approaches that overlapped with my studies. As a studied sociologist and political scientist, I was, and of course am, very interested in social context and radicalization tendencies and how this even works together. For me, it became clear, or very clear, during the workshops that I would like to be part of it, that I would like to do it as a profession, to get my academic background into it and work on social projects, especially within sports. I saw a very great opportunity there to be involved. So I talked to the CJD who were organizing the workshops. And after a bit of exchanges, I started to be the team of the CJD. So I joined them and gave them my practical inputs and turned them additionally into my work as a soccer coach. So to the end, I'm a bit of a product, so to say, of the Safe Zone project. I heard a lot of things in these workshops and I wanted to implement them to my team, but then COVID-19 came across and many of the things that I planned to do with the young players could not be implemented in the way that I wanted to. Of course, I'm aware through my academic background that it's the case that young people are much more vulnerable to radicalization without their weekly sport and contact with their social environment, like Paulo Rocha told us before. In addition, the COVID-19 pandemic had also been able to foster anti-democratic assumptions and attitudes. Nevertheless, I noticed a high level of enthusiasm for topics outside of soccer within my team. There were a lot of questions out of the young players, like what does this mean for us? What does COVID-19 does with the society, and much more. So for me, the focus was now on not to manage that my team is playing well, that my team is winning. I focused especially on values like team spirit. And I was really proud of that. All of my team was part of it and they always wanted to know more. So, and especially since then, my coaching team and I have been trying to work in an even more value-based manner in particular. which means in addition to our functioning team already, we wanted to establish fundamental values of fair play, cohesion, understanding for others, no matter where they come from or which social background they bring in. To this end, we have tried a lot of things, a lot of practices. For example, we asked them, what are the most important values? What is for you the most important thing in football as a team? It was often said, among other things like being polite or being in time, it was often said that fair play is an essential part. But that was a really obvious answer, I think, in football. So we asked them, but what does fair play mean to you? So we explained to them, or we explained together, that fair play isn't more than just playing fair. It is, for me and for my team now, the consideration for each other, the mutual helping up, is the understanding for the life situation for other people. It's respect for everyone on the field, nevertheless, if it's referees or opponents, but it's also very important that fair play isn't something which remains on the field. It's also necessary to transfer these values into the everyday life, into the schools, into the society, and into the social context. So all these things are essential for me to prevent radicalization at the outset. For me, value-based work is at least as important as countering already radicalized conflicts. Prevention is then, for me, as important as intervention. For this, it is crucial for me to promote a democratic understanding. But how can we do this as coaches in concrete terms? We only have the possibility to offer an alternative view to a perspective that is offered in school, that is offered at home, on the media, or in the social environment. We don't want to impose a view. I think that's very crucial. We have to offer an alternative view. This only works together. As Raffaele said in the beginning, it's very important to do like a multi-agency approach. So we have to work together with the association, we have together with the clubs, we have together with the parents and the local authorities. In addition to our daily work, we also have to communicate as a unit, everyone together. And it includes also to showing a stance, to stand up for our values, to show attitude against anti-democratic and radicalized statements and processes that affect us in some way. For example, in our hometown in Kiel, there was a demonstration for right-wing populism on our sports field. So it was announced by the city, and within one day, we organized a various amount of social actors who were joining. We mobilized them through different organizations, through the local media, we advertised it on social media. And so we were a lot of more people than the demonstration was. So the counter demonstration was much more efficient. We came together, we gathered and took to the streets for values and democracy. It was irrelevant if we are rivals among our clubs. So we just stand together, we were standing up for values. And so a surprising number of people joined them. And it was a really nice counter demonstration. It was again possible to show there that soccer has a very integrated function. But we can also use science, for example, as coaches or as a club. We can paint the clubhouse with slogans like, it's no place for racism, soccer belongs to everyone, for example. That is what I've learned through soccer and through the project. We coaches have responsibility. We have to be a role model, like Alessia said in the beginning. We want to and we have to stand up for values. We have to explain values. We have to communicate them, and we have to stand up for them as a unit. Soccer is understood through the project, in my opinion, as a place of prevention, as a place that can teach democracy, and a place that can offer protection for radicalization. To this end, it's also important, but it's another thing to place it into the official coach education. To the end now, but much more importantly, it is important for us to promote democratic togetherness, together as coaches, together as a club, together as a country, together in our transnational context, and together as a football community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Now we will invite the coach from another area as well. So we had martial arts, football, and now we are going to cycling. But we found out in the project that every sportsman is a bit extreme, and cycling is a very extreme sport as well in terms of efforts that the sports people in cycling are giving to that sport. So please, Ms. Antonella Belluti, would you like to share your experiences and story with us?
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to take part in this very interesting event. And I introduce myself briefly. I'm graduate in sports science. After my retirement, I have had many different experiences in the field of sport. But first of all, I'm an activist for assist, and since 22 years, that means since the day of its foundation. And assist exists to promote and defend the rights and the image of female athletes and sport workers, and to foster equality and respect in sport, contrast gender stereotypes and discrimination, as well as promote a positive sport culture. Assist also aims to raising awareness about all topics concerning equal rights in sport, equal access to sports practice, and sport culture in general. And now, since there is the possibility, I prefer to switch in Italian to better explain myself, because the topic is very sensitive. So, è possibile, allora posso parlare in italiano? Sì.
Possible? Can I speak in Italian? Yes. Can you please confirm? Can you hear the English translation?
Sì, sì. Okay. Allora, nel mondo dello sport,
in the sports world, I think that there is a very strong tendency to radicalization that leads to this extremization of the concept of performance, and mainly male performance, creating some bias that is not acceptable anymore. This tendency has started since the beginning of the new era of sports in the fall of the Industrial Revolution, and the model for managing sports has been pervaded by capitalistic and paternalistic values that tend to define roles that are different between men and women. So men deal with production and women with reproduction. And this is because we are very much aware that sports has to strengthen the orientations that are culturally defining what is appropriate and natural for a man to do or for a woman to do. And this has two main consequences. First of all, that in the middle of everything, there is the performance, and sports is composed of many aspects, like such as physical activity, non-agonistic sports, school sports, having a healthy lifestyle, but all of these dimensions, I'm speaking at least about the Italian situation, only at the professional level. So in Italy, for example, it is very hard to practice sports if you're not part of a federation, if you're not a member. So it's very hard, for example, for children to have a physical activity. For example, we have a very high rate of obesity in children. This means that sport is actually paid at a national level. The second very serious consequence of this situation is that women are actually marginalized. And we always speak about de Coubertin as being the father of modern sports, but we never speak about Les Milliards because it's thanks to her that women have been able to participate in sports and to take part in the Olympic Games. But this has led women to have equity in the Olympic Games only in London in 2012, because the first Olympic marathon was actually run by women only in 1994. So women are tolerated into the sports world today if they actually conform to the paradigms that have been approved, and if they conform to those paternalistic values that I was talking about before. And this is bad not only for women, but only for all the men who are not actually happy with all this model, because there is also another kind of discrimination. For example, if a man wants to do synchronized swimming, for example, he's discriminated as well. So we have a very contradictory situation, because on one side, there is an extraordinary role for sports, for personal growth, physical growth, and everyone is saying that, even supranational institutions such as the Lisbon Treaty is saying that. So sports is about delegating to the body some of the highest qualities of the human soul, but on the other hand, there are some situations that are actually going against this very important values. And we think that these situations, we cannot accept them anymore, thanks to my experience as an athlete and in the sports world, and thanks to my activism in assist, I can say that the gender gap is still the only game that women's sports still has to win. Only 30% of members, and we are speaking about 4.5 million, only 40% of those are women. But if we want to consider the state of the medals, won, it is divided between men and women. And the second element is that in Italy there is a law that is against the Constitution, because it actually regulates the professional practice of sports, and federations can choose what disciplines they can open to women. So there is only 4 of the 44 national federations in which women are allowed as professionals. And we have, on the other hand, of the sports world, more and more specialization. So it is hard for women to be able to play sports and also go to school. So in this context, this high-level sport is actually hard to actually undertake. And despite the quotas, the discriminatory quotas, the presence of women in institutions is almost none. And only recently, during the last elections, for the first time, and I am speaking about 107 years of sports history, there's been, for the first time, a female president of a sports federation. There's been also a women commissioner that has been appointed recently, but we are speaking about only 2 women in more than 800 posts as federation posts, president, sorry. So this situation, of course, has its repercussion also on the technical levels, because most of the members at a high level are only men. So this vision that is mainly a male vision of sports has, of course, an impact on the management model that doesn't change. And that's why Italian sport is very conservative, because not only there are not many women, but it's also mainly the same men who are always actually managing sports in Italy. So today I am responsible for the new projects in Assist, and I am very proud to say that Assist is taking part in many Erasmus Plus projects, and thanks to this possibility, Assist is doing a lot at the European level, and what it hasn't been able to do so far in Italy. So Assist has been able to push Italy to actually deal with certain teams, and also to be able to count with an international support. And first of all, I would like to speak about the Fair Coaching project. It's a very strong partnership on actions and contents, and we have worked with the Volley Federation. So fair coaching is about, it actually suggests a method in order for coaches to understand fully what is their role, their role as educators. So in tackling harassment, so coaches, you really play a huge role, also as defenders of democratic values. And the second experience that I want to talk to you about Assist is the SAVER. SAVE is a sports abuse and violence elimination, and more than a project, it is a service, because for the first time in Italy, Assist has really raised the attention on the theme of violence and abuse in sports, offering a service thanks to the collaboration with the association Differenza Donna, who is dealing with a toll-free number against violence. So I think that the theme of violence and radicalization can actually have many forms. And to conclude, I am telling you that no more than a year ago, an athlete, and I think you all have heard about her, Lara Lulli, has been actually sued because she got pregnant. She's a volleyball player in the A series, and even though she's not a professional, she had to sign a compromissory clause, what we call an anti-mother clause. And the institutions didn't say anything to defend her. So this girl had to be sued because she got pregnant. And thanks to Assist, the situation has been resolved. but I am reminding you of this fact because it is really an indicator of the environment, the sports environment in Italy, and sports really needs to grow and to regenerate itself in Italy in order to grow to its full potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonella. This was really something that raised many questions about sport, the role of sport as such, and the role of sport coaches in general. Of course, sport is a promoter of profit, of industry, being oriented in this, what you mentioned, productional sense, and not being seen only as activity, which is good for our health and good for our development. And we had some questions for you, all of you, but we will leave it for the end of session 2, because we are a little bit out of time, starting late with the conference. I will provoke you to think in these terms. What are the coaches supposed to do to really prevent such behavior, discrimination, radicalization, violence in sport? What is to do if you see that your colleague is doing the opposite, promoting violence in sport in order to achieve the results? And think about how COVID pandemic has worsened situation and how we will deal with that in the following years that are coming in front of us. Thank you very much for this, for your time now. And I think we have a coffee break, and then we will start with session 2. And we will leave the question for the end of session 2.
So if you agree, we can have a 10-minute coffee break because we're a bit behind schedule. So let's say maybe 15 minutes because it's been a long session. So we can go back at 25 minutes past 12. So please have a coffee. So welcome back. I hope you had a break and a good coffee. We are now, we have more or less 1 hour left, a little bit like 1 hour left of our conference. And now we're going to session 2, successful practices for prevention of youth violence in sport. These will be moderated by Eckhard Müller-Bachmann, our TJD partner from Germany. Hello. And it will be actually, it's been affected by the fact that 2 of the speakers couldn't be with us. And we have 2 speakers online. And the only speaker present here is Matej Lunesnik. So I leave to Eckhard the moderation.
Yes, thank you very much. The Portuguese team just made a group photo, and there were 5, and we were supposed to be 4 from Germany, and now we're only 2 due to Corona. So this is why the table is a bit left over here, only to 2 persons, me and Matej. Then we have 1 person not coming from Germany. I will try to talk a bit about what he might have talked about, and 2 more persons being online, as Katja already said. I'm not talking anymore about what happened due to the Corona situation. I will give the floor first to this very complicated, for me complicated to spell name, to Sara Vivirito. She's there online, right? Okay, I give the floor to you, Sara. And please introduce yourself, because I might make some mistakes with that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes.
Perfect.
Everyone, do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Sara Vivirito. My experience in sport started as an athlete. I was an athletics athlete. Specifically, I ran at 200 and 400 meters. Then a bad injury forced me to stop running, and I started to coach and train children and adolescents and teenagers between 5 and 18 years old. I worked in several sport center in Palermo. I started training children and adolescents, and I worked in several sports centers in Palermo and in Milano. I worked with children and teenagers in vulnerable conditions, and I took part in several projects aimed at promoting social inclusion of children and teenagers. At the same time, I studied sport psychology, and I had a master's degree in sport psychology called Sport and Psychosocial Intervention. Nowadays, I work in CHAPES as project manager in the unit called Wellbeing, Sport and Disability. In this unit, I deal with the development and the implementation of several projects in the field of sport, health promotion, physical education, and social inclusion. So my experience taught me that sport can be a field for prevention of radicalization and also violent extremism. So because sport can able to transmit to young youth people and young athletes a lot of different models of behaviors and positive behaviors. So thanks to sport, athletes can develop a lot of different skills, not only motor or technical skill, but of course life skills and transversal skills that can be useful in different fields and different areas of their life. So the most important relationship in sport is, of course, the relationship between athlete and coach. It's really, really important for a coach to be a positive role model in the life of young athletes, to give to the athlete a lot of different positive examples. And also it's important to give attention to the needs and to the necessities of each children, of each teenagers, and to look at the athlete as a whole person. So it's also really, really important to adopt a suitable communication style. For example, there are a lot of children that need to be encouraged and motivated, and there are other children that need to be protected in the sport field. In this way, sport can become a real tool for social inclusion, not only for give to children and teenagers the possibility to access to sport practice, but also to give to youth people the possibility to become really integrated in the actual social structure in the actual society. In this way, coach and sport instructor can help to fight violence and discrimination in sport. So now I'm going to introduce you a lot of different practical activities in which I was personally involved, like sport trainer and coach. These are two activities, Art Sport and Sport Identity, are two Erasmus Plus projects, both aimed to skill development in youth workers and in coach in order to prevent and fight violent radicalization in sport. So the first experience is Sport Identity. So thanks to this project, several coach and sport instructor from all Europe was involved in the practical development of different tools, exercise, practical activities based on non-formal education and methodologies. And they applied this tool with several minors, youth, children in vulnerable conditions. For example, we worked with migrants, refugees, and so on. The main results and the main output developed are a benchmark of good practice for preventing violent radicalization, a methodological guide aimed at supporting the sport citizen in different youth organizations or in different sport clubs. And finally, the most important results is a toolkit for youth worker and for sport instructor and for educators, of course, aimed at prevent radicalization in sport. Sport coaches and sport instructors use it in their training center in their club these tools, and they once a week implemented their practical activities. For example, they integrated some role play, energizer, and other tools based on non-formal education in their sporting activities. The second project is iSport project, aimed to promote social inclusion, but also integration in the society and the development of identity and personality of youth people. So the target group of this project were three different target groups. First of all, refugees and migrants from host communities in Palermo, SPRAR. Then youth prisoner adult the youth detention center in Palermo, and finally university students. So these three target groups trained together for a lot of months in Palermo, and they take part in different sport activities from three different sports, specifically athletics, futsal and volleyball, and they were trained by a lot of well-trained and experted coach and sport instructors. So the participants, thanks to the sport activities, learned to know each other. They had a lot of different team building activity. They had fun, and of course they improved their vision of the world. They learned to respect each other, and they developed a strong sense of union. At the end of the project were organized several tournaments and competitions in different sports. But the most important thing is not the victory, is not to lose or win the match, but the main victory was the victory of the sport that make really a sense of union on these participants. So we collected several positive feedback from all the participants. For example, they told us that during these sport activities, there are no stereotypes, there are no prejudice, no barriers, and on the sport field, all the people are on the same field because they can speak a common language that is the language of the sport. So thanks to these different projects and thanks to these different practical activities, we give the possibility of different target groups like migrants, refugees, or of course youth prisoners to participate in sport activity, but not only to access to sport activities, but to become really and fully integrated in our audience society. Of course, we give to the participants new opportunity for socialization and social inclusion. We were able to prevent risky behavior or challenging behavior in sport. And finally, we promoted the acquisition of new skill and new competence in youth trainer, in sport instructor, and of course in coaches. So we hope that in the future, the collected good and best practice, the exercise developed, and of course the new practical tool implemented can be used in the daily sport practice, in the daily activity practice, in the sport club and in the sport center by coach and after the end of the project. So this is my experience. Thank you for your attention. And I'm really glad to your invitation. And I'm really sorry that I can't be here with you in Rome.
Yes, thank you, Zara. Thank you very much. Very interesting speech. And I think what we haven't heard about that much today is also the aspect of identity development that you just mentioned with young people practicing sports. And this is something, sorry, what we haven't heard that much today is what you just mentioned is the identity development, Sarah. And I think this is really, really interesting because this is something we were also focusing in our workshops on, because as you all know that young people who are practicing sport really are in the process of development, of identity development. So this is something where, as Sebastian said, I think value education could kind of cling into. Thank you, Zara. This roundtable is relatively spare, and our German guest can't come because of COVID, as I said already. He's a consultant. I will just tell you a very brief, just to have an idea what we have been doing in our project with the German Football Association and what he would have talked about for his association, so that you just have an idea what we are in Germany had focused on, as we already heard that the persons in Slovenia were more on the martial arts aspect. We were more involved in the football area because this is where we got relative good and positive feedback when we were asking for institutions and associations to be partner in the project. And this Andy Wacławczyk, who can't be here today, he was a consultant at the Federal Association of Football in the federal state of Schleswig-Holstein. You all know that Germany has federal states, 16 altogether, and each federal state has an own federal football association, and in each of these football associations there are consultants for social affairs, for anti-discrimination issue, anti-racism issues, for prevention, for intervention, and this would have, or is his function, and he would have talked about it. And I'm just very briefly trying to give you an idea what this football area is about in Germany. As you know, we are very football maniacs, as all the Italians are as well, and the Portuguese even more, I guess. But just to give you numbers, we have altogether more than 24,000 registered football clubs who have more or less more than 87,000 youth teams playing all over Germany. And in this more than 87,000 football youth teams, there are more than 2 million people, boys and girls, playing football in the age range between 6 and 18. So more or less 2 million young football players. And for sure, we have also surveys on radicalization of young people in Germany, in Europe, and some of the most recent studies have simply found out that more or less 10% are in the danger of kind of getting radical values into their behavior. So if you put this number of the 10% and count the 2 million football players, you can imagine that there is a population we should try to reach, and this is what we did through our Federal Football Association, just to give you an idea of our background, what we did in Germany. And in Schleswig-Holstein, Andy Wacławczyk would have talked about the programs he and the Football Association are working on, and I'm just mentioning one very interesting, I would say, at least from my perspective, it's very interesting. They have so-called democracy trainers who are more on the intervention aspect, interventive methodology. If something happens in the area of football or soccer, as Sebastian called it, these democracy trainers go into the areas, go to the clubs and try to mediate the conflicts. These conflicts could be either racial, racism, it could be discrimination, it could be right-wing extremism areas, or it could simply be violence. So this is more or less an interventive methodology they are working on. And what we did with our workshops, and this is just my point, is that we have tried to develop a preventive idea, to preventive methodology into this football association, and they were, I would say, more or less pleased that we come with this idea to them. Nowadays are working on cooperations with different federal football associations all over Germany, at least in North Germany. There's a program now on this idea of prevention, and I think we helped them with developing the idea. They also helped us with developing and implementing the workshops, and we are grateful that yes, they could help us. I could talk a bit more about programs they have. Maybe one more, which is also relatively interesting, I would say, is the resocialization or reintegration of juvenile delinquencies who are focusing on a sentence in prisons and youth prisons in Schleswig-Holstein, and they are trained to become referees in terms of value development. Juvenile delinquencies are getting a workshop series how to become a referee, football referee, in terms of to focus on rules and on teaching rules and implementing rules in the football pitch, on the football pitch once they leave the prison. So very nice idea, I would say. And this is more or less my replacement for Andy Wacławczyk. So he's not there, maybe he's looking at us. Greetings. And now I would like to give the floor to the next complicated name. I try to exercise it. It's my neighbor here. It's Matej Luneszczyk.
Yes.
Luneszczyk, I made it. Okay.
Bravo.
Matej.
Okay, thank you. How do I switch to my presentation? You can help me. Thank you for your word, Eckhart. And you spell it very good. You announce good my name. So I'm glad you learn it. Hello to everybody. Hello to all the spectators that are watching us. I am Matej Luneszczyk, as we said, psychologist, sports psychologist. I'm working on the area of mental preparation for sportists. Also working in companies dealing stress on topics of leadership, group dynamic, etc. For the beginning, I would like to tell you a story that reflects a little bit this what we are talking about. Once there were one samurai, and he went to one teacher, one guru, and he wanted to ask him what is the difference between hell and like heaven. And he went there, and this guy, this master, he was sitting under the trees in this meditate pose, and the samurai approached and he said, please, can you tell me what is the difference between hell and heaven? And the teacher just looked at him and said, you piece of shit, I don't want to talk to you. Get out of my face, go. And of course, samurai, they're really proud warriors, you know. And he took his sword and wanted to smash him with the sword and kill him. And at that point, teacher said, you see, this is hell. The samurai recognized the message, put the sword down and said, thank you. And at that point, master said, you see, this is heaven. And this is something that we need to teach our children, to be grateful, to be thankful about all the opportunities that also sport can give them. And I'm working a lot with sportists, and it's a problem because, you know, now these days, we all know that we all have like needs to be self-actualized, to have this feeling of self-fulfillment. But those days, like social problem, from my point of view, is that we are telling our children that they will get satisfaction by doing something external. So if you're going to have new iPhone, if you're going to have, if you're going to get good grades, etc. But they are not teaching them to get this internal motivation. And this is something that I'm working a lot with athletes, to get this internal motivation
by doing something just because you're doing it, because we all want like self-progress. We all want to go to express ourselves in some way. And sport is something that you can do this. You can approach to this, you can progress in sport, you can get to some point of self-actualization. But I also think that this is one problem in sport, because a lot of co-workers in sport, and especially athletes, they only focused to the result. So again, external affirmation. Then you get like nervosity, you know. I was working as a ski coach a lot of years, also in World Cup, dealing with, as a coach with top athletes. And I remember like Tina Maze, I don't know if you know her, or if you heard her about her. He's two-time, or I don't know how many times she gets Olympic medal. And she still have this record of collecting the most points in World Cup. And she was always like very in bad mood when she was second or third. So her motivation was always the result. But then I know also, because I was like living with those athletes, Janica Kostelić, she was also top athlete. She also gets a lot of medals. But she always was like satisfied. She doesn't care a lot. She just wants to ski and that's it. And these are really like two types that I want to represent now, because what I see that athletes, and especially all, I can say also people, they are not distinguishing between self-affirmation and self-respect. And this is something I'm teaching about my athletes that are working with me. And from my point of view, self-affirmation is when you are affirming yourself over the result. So I'm first, I'm the best, bravo, you know, shaking hands. Self-respect is when I'm giving my maximum. So I'm related to what I do in my activity. This is something that also gives me feedback. So if I do my maximum, I'm like satisfied and I'm progressing towards expressing my potential. And I'm not depending on the result, because the result is always, you know, something that you cannot be really depend on. And this brings nervosity into sportist mind, or even to our mind when we are in life, just depending on how much money do we get, which position we will have in company, etc. This brings us some nervosity because we are always in a lack of something. And from my opinion, violence is always a result of lacking, that you have lack of something. So you have lack of having feeling of progressing, feeling of self-fulfillment, etc. And this is something that my athletes needs to distinguish between self-respect. So I will do this because I want to progress in my life, to express myself to the limit. Not that I want to be this guy, that I want to win this, and so on, as we heard with Sarah before. And this is something that really helped my athletes to refocus their values from having the best result, or I don't know, score so many goals, to this, I really focusing on myself. And this brings me control, because I can control my feelings. I cannot control what is the result of the game. And this is something that really sport has. Why? Because sport has rules. If you play the ball into the corner between two lines, this is in and 5 millimeters is out. And in our life, you know, life is not like this. It's always, the rule is really, really sometimes not really measurable or really set. And sport can give you rules. and can give you like this control and like feeling of safetyness in your life, because you get a goal and you get a deeper meaning and you have rules. So for example, in football, if you hit some guy, you get green, like
Yellow.
this, yes,
Yellow.
yellow card, and or red, and you're out. So what I'm trying to say is that from my point of view, sport is for youngsters like some faculty of life. So you're learning to set goals and to achieve them with your own effort. And your result is like a result of your struggling, your doing with yourself on a matter of technique, tactic, mental skill, and so on and so on. So you're learning how to progress in some area of your life by doing something by your own. And this is something that it's not really common in our life. We all know that in work is not like this. It sometimes is more important that you know what wine the chief is drinking than to giving your best at your workplace. But in sport, this is really set because everything is measurable. And this is something that we should, this is my message to all, that sport can provide people that they are focused to themselves and they are focused to express themselves through sport and learn how to progress through their own affirmation and through their own like effort. And that's why I really respect sport. And I really think that sport should be more frequently in all areas of our life, and that we should teach our children how to deal with sports through their effort, not through their result. And this is something I want to say too, that it's not only goals that you need to set, but it's very important to have somehow like deeper meaning. Why are you doing this? Because when I like speak with sportists, I ask them simple question: why are you doing this? Why are you playing tennis? Why are you skiing? Why? And they started, oh, I don't know, I like to do this. Come on, you want to go 140 miles per hour, kilometers per hour, and it's minus 20, and you want to do this, you like this? I said, no, I don't like this. But why? And then why you're doing this? And they don't know. They really don't know. They're starting to, scratch themselves, and then they said, I don't know. But then we found out that they're doing this because they want to get feeling of proudness. Because when you win, they say, I want to win. Okay, but then what? What is then? Why? And then we get to the point that they recognize that they want the feeling of proudness. They want the feeling of self-fulfillment. And this is something that the sport can give you, and can give you a deep meaning. And then you don't need violence, because you're not in lack of nothing. You're fulfilled, you have deep meaning, that you're doing something good. Or even if you're like, I don't know, really master of your mind. For example, I will give you one good example of, do I have 1 minute, two more?
Yes, maybe one.
Of Muhammad Ali. You all know Muhammad Ali. He started to box because one teacher saw him breaking all the chairs in one school because somebody stole his bike. And he started to box, but he wanted to box because he wanted to affirmate that everybody will know him, all black people. So he will tell them that they are also valued and they can also succeed in everything in their life. And sport was like a tool for him to get message and spread the message all over the world and helping people. And this is for me really something. So sport is very bright and can give you a lot of things. Okay, expressing yourself, self-actualization, and also meaning and helping society to give their best.
Thank you, Mate. Thank you very much. The aspect of internal motivation is something that is really interesting. And the aspect of empowerment, for sure. We will have lots of examples, I guess, on this issue as well, on empowerment through sports. We have one more speaker left, and we need to clarify the remaining questions from the chat. So I would like to give the floor to the next complicated name for me, Tommaso Trevisi, project manager in the area of sport. She's online as well. And maybe we can give you, well, 12 to 14 minutes, and then we try to solve the remaining questions from the chat and from the audience, sorry.
Hey, thank you, Carl. I just share my screen. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
I switch to Italian too, if it's fine.
Okay.
Allora, grazie a tutti intanto.
Thank you all for inviting me. First of all, I work for GEA. That's a social cooperative. It's a non-profit social cooperative founded in Padua in 2004. And we deal with the social inclusion of people and families with a migrant background. And since 2018, we have carried out numerous European projects in which sport has been used to promote social inclusion, gender equality, to prevent violence, and to train children with low schooling. I am project manager for European projects. And other than that, I am also a soccer coach, and I practice sport. So sport is absolutely essential for me in my daily routine. All the speakers before me have given examples, very important examples. So I will try to explain some of the key points. In our work, every time we have to face a project, we try to follow a method, which is mainly getting in touch with the key players in the territory, meaning the educators, the coaches, the families, the associations. And we collaborate with them throughout the duration of the project. We make a context analysis to understand what social dynamics are present. And we try to deal with this through sport, because sport is a tool that makes it easier to actually teach and to actually learn and to build relationships between coaches and children and young people and people who have a different background and different also personal histories. We would like to tell you about two European projects that are called OnSide and YARSPE that have been used to prevent violence through sports. The first project is the OnSide project that aimed at creating a series of materials and activities for amateur soccer teams. And these activities and those materials have the objective of supporting the work of amateur clubs to prevent racism. So the work has been to see what all the various moments of a soccer team and see what are the activities that can be done both on the field and outside of the field. And we try to change these activities and put some elements that could actually favor the dialogue, that could actually try to make social issues emerge. So we wanted the coaches during the training season to use some of these exercises, of these activities, instead of another PA activities that they usually used. You can see, for example, here on field and outside of the field. So, for example, the warm-up, when the coach asks some questions concerning intercultural questions, and they do the warm-up while asking these questions. And why is it useful to do this? Because it actually stimulates the dialogue between players on certain teams, and it actually gives responsibility to some youth that have a hard time taking responsibility for something. So, for example, if I ask them what color is the Nigerian t-shirt, soccer t-shirt, they would know it, for example. And so this actually favors dialogue and also better knowledge between the different teammates. Or, for example, there's a game when players are in circle and two players are in the middle, and the players outside are actually passing the ball, and the players inside, they cannot take the ball. So in this case, each player has a character they have to play, and the coach during this game, he actually proposes some discriminations to one of the characters in the game. And for example, he needs to play only with a foot, like for example, the left foot or right foot, etc. So all the aspects of the game have been analyzed in order to stimulate dialogue between players and coach, and so that the coach can actually understand, and if he recognizes some wrong dynamics, he can propose some alternatives. So the coach has a very important and a crucial educational role, and this is very clear for us, even in the other project that we have dealt with, which is the YARSPE project, is a project under the same funding line as Safe Zone. And in this case too, there are going to be some training for coaches and for middle school students. And we understood that it is essential to speak with the kids in order from some important themes to emerge, and you can do this through sports. And we can also give them some alternatives, show them that there are some different ways of reacting. And we would like also to make some proposals. Inside this project, some proposals have emerged, and the first one is to promote grassroots sports, and we think that this is also in line with what the European Commission thinks. So the grassroots sports are very important and are an essential means for people to be able to meet in a secure place. And this is also helping in actually including people that are at risk of being marginalized or radicalization. Second proposal, that sports federation must promote training on social topics for coaches. And we think that it is very important that it is sports federation that have to promote this mandatory training for coaches on these topics. And they also need to monitor the way coaches actually behave. And this is very important because we have many coaches that are not educators, but on the contrary, they actually stimulate radicalization of young people. And third proposal, to make professional support for coaches structural. We are doing another project on this. It is the Replay project. And we propose mentors for coaches of grassroots sports. And so the mentors are university students at the end of their university course in social issues and specially trained to undertake this role. So we think that this is very important both for students that for coaches because they are also offered a different perspective, a different view on things. So my conclusions, first of all, I want to thank the coaches for the vital role they play in our society. And we propose to dedicate time on technical and sporting improvement, but also give value to the relational work with young people, dedicate time to the team, to getting to know each other and talking about social issues and social dynamics. And also another advice is don't pretend not to see the unpleasant episodes, but try to use them as an example and propose a different behavior. And I hereby conclude, and once again, thank you for inviting us to this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommaso. Okay, as we have some time left, I would like to simply ask all of the speakers we had in this roundtable and the others, if they are or if they are not left already, if they're there. Just a simple question: if you look at the future, if simply you imagine our topic, what in your perspective are the future challenges, your recommendations, and in the thematic field, in the thematic area of radicalization prevention, or as we say in Germany, of democracy integration? Is there anything that comes to your mind that is very crucial for the future, the near future, in terms of radicalization prevention? As you are sitting here as my neighbor, I have it really easy to touch you. So you're the first one, sorry.
Okay, no problem. My opinion is that, this is very, very deep question.
Yes, I know.
You know, it's not simply to answer if you know the problematic. But I think, from my point of view, that we need to teach children, youngsters, and also our society to also teach children to express themselves through effort that they are giving their maximum. For example, if you're in school and you came at home, and mother will always say, okay, you get an exam, what is your grade? I want to ask my daughter, did you do your best? This is something very different. And in the future, we need to teach all co-workers in sport, coaches, athletes,
our like society to also teach children that this is also important, not only result, not only grades, not only if you have iPhone, not only that your mother is, I don't know, having such a car, etc. But to dealing with this like motive that I'm doing something good for myself and also trying to help with this maybe in the future to somebody else. And this is something in the future we need to do, but it's very hard because everything is set based on having results, going to university with these results, having so much money, blah blah blah. And I think this is huge motive for all our society. But I think it's not impossible, you know. And this is something we all need to do, and also teach, especially coaches and sport co-workers in this in this mindset.
Okay, the internal mindset development, so to say.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Internal. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because we need to distinguish also between terminal and interminal. Internal. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Matej. I can't see the others. Is there any idea from the other speakers?
I think that Belluti wants to answer your
you
question.
can see that? Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
hear gossips from behind, so maybe you can talk.
So in my opinion, the biggest future challenge is, of course, to ensure that vulnerable target groups cannot not only have access to sports, but also become truly integrated into today's society. So this requires the joint commitment and effort of all the figures who play a key role in the personal and, of course, in the sporting development of young athletes. So it's really, really important, the commitment of instructors, coach, but also of parents, family, teammates, and so on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Antonella Belluti.
Volevo dire due cose.
Yes, I wanted to say two things concerning the challenges of the future. Sports should become a right for citizens, and so everyone should be able to practice sports, and this will be possible only if sports gets into the schools. And second thing that I wanted to say is that in the associations where sports is practiced, we don't need to be thinking only about the performance, and this is done through awareness raising with the leadership, and also having a transformational leadership aiming at an interaction between three worlds: the athletes' world, the world of the federation, and the external world. So we need to have an holistic and very wide approach based on personal growth, because you cannot have a performance without a personal growth.
Okay, thank you. Another? No?
So I can go to the next question. That was a question for Matej Plavek. And that was on the chat, so I'm going to read it. The question is, what tools can coaches activate when they realize that one of their colleagues is misunderstanding his or her role, for example, by pushing too hard for a win, or by feeding the cult of violence in a young person instead of slowing down their impulse?
Yeah, I think even this is really, really difficult questions. Yeah, a difficult question, because it's really hard. I have a lot of experience when I met the guy with whom I can see that he can be potential to some kind of extreme and radical behavior. and it's really hard to react on this, because you don't know what to do. Or you can throw him out, or you can push him, so he needs to do more of a training. So this is really, yeah, really wide, really open questions. Yeah, from my perspective, I always want to feel who is the person, and I love when the person is coming for the training every day. So if I see something like this, I go into the closer contact with the student or with the youth, and I talk with the parents. How is he acting at home? And this is something that we trainers should do if we realize and see some strange behavior. So this is, I don't know if I answered the question, because the question was really big.
About
yeah.
Can maybe I help him a little bit? For example, what is very important to do always? Each person has his own goal, and he wants to do something because of something. And you need to find this. So each guy that has like violent behavior, he always wants to do also something, and you need to find this, and then you should ask him, can you reach this goal by doing this shit? And this is very simple. And everybody then start to think, okay, I want to play soccer in the first team, and I'm doing stupid things. Am I going to play soccer in first team if I'm doing this? No. Would you do this then in the future, or in this like martial arts? Are you going to compete in some, I don't know, tournament if you're going to behave like this? No. And then the answer is for him also like advice, what to do. And I think this is something that we need to always find, this inner motivation. What causes you to act in sport? Why are you doing this? And then can you reach this with your behavior? And then they stop doing it because it's stupid. If they don't want to do the sport, then it's better that you leave the gym or that you're not doing it. And this is something
for colleagues as well, for coaches, because you might want to know why they want that guy to win so hard. And that you may find that the answer to that is.
And really, if I just connect, I was listening to the previous commenter, and the guys, what I saw from my this years of work in the martial arts, if the young people, if they don't move enough, then they come with some kind of anger, some kind of negative energy, and they want to go into the interaction with this. So a lot of times it happens because the children, they don't move enough, then they come to train. Then it is on us. We need to somehow transform them, but it costs a lot. You need to put a lot of energy. So this is even in my speech, I was just trying to tell us, even me, but I'm doing it already. So we need to put more effort so the children will move more, because I think this is the some kind of our gift for we will have a lot of gifts if we will put more effort so the children will move more. They move. They have a gym like a gymnastic 2 hours in a week in the primary school. So this is nothing. They have a lot of energy. We need to put like European Commission, or I don't know, our government, we need to put more effort that our children will move more. But for this kind of action, we need more educated trainers. So this is.
Yes.
May I, Katja?
We have someone here from the audience here. No, not the audience, but Renato Marino that would like to give an answer, and then I will leave the floor to you. I'll try. Sì, non lo so se lo sento. No, la faccio io la traduzione. I'll try.
Ti impegno.
And then Goran.
Then Goran.
Vorrei dare una risposta metodologica.
He would like to provide a methodological answer to this question.
Rivolta ai ragazzi, quindi ai coach dei ragazzi.
For coaches.
Innanzitutto sicuramente adottare una nuova metodologia.
So first we need to change out the methodology, the teaching methodology.
Di insegnamento e di allenamento.
Teaching methodology and training methodology.
Dalla formale alla non formale.
From formal to informal.
Che vuol dire scegliendo il gioco rispetto allo sport.
So preferring the play, choosing to play instead of exercise.
In fase iniziale.
In the beginning.
Favorire l'inclusione rispetto alla selezione.
Favor inclusion and not selection.
Variando le regole di ingaggio con giochi di collaborazione.
Going from rules to involve to collaboration games.
Stimolando il contatto fisico innanzitutto con sport fisici.
Stimulating physical contact through physical sports.
Utilizzando spazi e strumenti diversificati.
Using different spaces and different tools.
Inventando e adottando regole nuove.
Inventing and adopting new rules.
E in finale,
and finally,
saper utilizzare gli spazi e ridurre al minimo i tempi morti delle attività motorie.
Okay, and
saper utilizzare gli spazi.
Learn how to use the space and reduce to the minimum the times during the training where nothing happens.
Questa è come esperienza di tecnico insegnante.
This is what he has experienced as a coach in his work. I think we should conclude. Goran. We have like 2 minutes left before the interpreters will leave us.
This was very good explanation. Now we got for the coaches how should they do their training, but still we are focusing on this multi-agency approach. And if one of the coaches see that the other coach is actually promoting this violence or is actually promoting the ideas of sport that are not healthy, that are not in accordance with that, what we just heard, what shall the coaches do? Who shall they contact? Who shall they involve? How to prevent that the other coach is doing bad job in the area of sport?
Yeah, thank you, Goran. That's the point. Because we are never alone facing problems with our colleagues or with our children. So just conclude, we have 1 minute. I mean, we have heard a lot about sports, and we have heard, first of all, that is essential in our life, is essential in the life of children. And there are many goals we should fight for when talking about this topic. Beyond the fight of radicalization, and it is the fact, first of all, how do we keep them engaged so that they don't drop out since it is so important? And then how we assure that the role coaches may have in guaranteeing a well-balanced psychosocial development can be acted upon. And basically, what happens when we see signs that psychosocial development is not going well, which is in a body, when we do sports, when we teach sports to children, in their body we can see and we can read a lot of things, but it's a big responsibility then to know what we do with that information. So this was about it. This is the big challenge, and of course multi-agency is an opportunity, because having the opportunity to gain the knowledge that coaches may have of the children, they have they see and they train every week, and also of the family and children relationships. This may add up a lot in all our efforts to prevent distress and to improve well-being, especially with risk minors. But for that, we need to learn how to do it better and to work together. So this was the challenge of the Safe Zone project. And of course, there is a lot of room, still a lot of room of maneuver to work on these issues beyond radicalization, targeting trauma or stress or inclusion in sports. So we really hope that we can go on working around this topic. And we thank very much the European Commission for allowing us to address these very relevant aspects, which are even more important now. We know that they are very important because after the 2 years of COVID, we are suffering the impact on our own bodies and on the lives of our children. So we really now know that we need to be much better, in facing these challenges. So I want to thank everyone for all the coaches and everyone that has participated and everyone that has been following us online. And thank you to the European Commission. So that's it. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.